This Film is Lit, the podcast where we finally settle the score on one simple question. Is the book really better than the movie? I'm Brian. I have a film degree, so I watch the movie, but don't read the book.
And I'm Katie. I have an English degree, so I do things the right way and read the book before we watch the movie.
Look, some of us are lazy, alright?
If by lazy you mean wrong.
Prepare to be wowed by our expertise and charm as we dissect all of your favorite film adaptations and decide whether the silver screen or the written word did it better. So turn it up, settle in, and get ready for spoilers, because guess what? This film is lit. On his 11th birthday, a young orphan discovers he's a wizard and begins a magical journey to fulfill his destiny. It's Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, and this film is lit. Hello, and welcome back to the 27th episode of This Film is Lit. This one, if you're listening when it drops, comes out on Harry Potter's birthday.
Yes, it does.
It's almost like we planned it.
Almost.
We are embarking on the 8-part series, figuring out how we're going to do the, I guess it'll just be 8 parts because it's 8 movies. So.
Yeah.
Even though that's nice. We get for one of them, we only have to read the book.
We can read half the book and then read the other half.
Yeah. I don't know if we can get away with that. We'll have to see. But this is the first episode. It's Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. Really excited about recording in our new studio at our new house that we have rented. Katie posted a picture on Instagram, Facebook, all those places. Check it out. Like, subscribe, rate us on iTunes, Stitcher, everywhere else. Let's get into it, though. Things are going to be different. We have basically 4 segments. First one is our, we're calling it Muggle Questions. Good friend of the show, Trevor. He submitted some questions for us. From a perspective of a non-book reader, we'll establish that, because we have both read the book. Normally, Our whole thing is one of us reads it, the other one doesn't, and then there's a back and forth about the film versus the book. In this instance, since we've both read these books many times throughout our childhood, we both love these books. That didn't make sense, obviously. I mean, I guess we could have not reread it, but we decided, well, let's get somebody else to have an outside perspective.
Yeah, I think that's a more interesting perspective, especially for something like Harry Potter.
Yes.
That is so popular.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And so he's never read any of the books. He's seen all the movies before, but he's rewatching them. He's submitted some questions, so you'll be hearing those. And then after that, we're going to basically just break down what's better in the movie, what's better in the book, and then we have another segment kind of where the name's up in the air, but it's basically things the movie did right from the book. Like, they didn't change it, they just nailed whatever the thing in the book was, basically. The movie nailed it, kind of, is that one. And then ultimately we will decide whether the book or the movie's better. I think we have I think I can tell you which way all of these episodes are going to go, but we'll see. I don't want to predict it right off. So yeah, but no Guess Who, no Lost in Adaptation, no Was That in the Book. Some of that may come up in Trevor's questions, but we'll see. Let's get into our first segment, Muggle Questions.
Muggle.
Non-magic folk.
Brian and Katie, my friends, thank you so much for having me on This Film is Lit. Great podcast. I have a few questions that I'm hoping you can answer for me as a individual who has only seen the movies, not read the books. Maybe give a little bit more insight. Now, before I get into too much, I do want to say that some of the questions I have may be answered later on, and I'm totally okay with that. I'm patient. I can wait. Also, I may have a question or two that is just completely stupid in the eyes of anybody else who is a hardcore fan of Harry Potter. I am much more of a casual fan, and if I ask any of those stupid questions, just tell me. First off, why did Nicholas Flamel give the stone to Hogwarts? If he had it in his possession the entire time, it seemed to be fine, and apparently needs it in his possession to stay alive, why offer it up to Dumbledore? The movie didn't really explain that.
Thank you, Trevor, by the way, for doing this. It's great fun. He's a radio DJ. He has a great voice for podcast. He also has a podcast, which he'll plug at the end here. Why did Nicholas Flamel give the Sorcerer's Stone to Dumbledore and to Hogwarts?
So the movie doesn't explain this. The
No.
book doesn't really either.
It does to some extent.
What did you find?
On page 220, this is my note that I have. We both have our book here. The dog must be guarded. This is Hermione says this to Harry and Ron. This is right after they discover who Nicholas Flamel is and figure it out. The dog must be guarding Flamel's Sorcerer's Stone. I bet he asked Dumbledore to keep it safe for him because they're friends and he knew someone was after it. That's why he wanted the stone moved out of Gringotts. So it was in Gringotts, and now this is their speculation. This isn't
right,
but it's the closest kind of we get to why. The stone was in Gringotts for safekeeping. But they knew, I think the implication is that they knew of the whisperings of Voldemort sort of coming back and sort of being, active again in some form or another, and that he might be looking for the Sorcerer's Stone. Because obviously we know that Dumbledore knows a lot more than he ever lets on. And so I think the implication and it's been a long time since I've read the later books, that he was aware that sort of Dumbledore was around Voldemort was around and trying to regain power and kind of come back.
There is in Deathly Hallows, I believe, a sort of flashback scene, I'll call it that to avoid spoilers.
Yeah.
Showing Dumbledore asking Snape to keep an eye on Quirrell for him.
That's right.
So there is some, we get it much, much later, but there is that kind of implication that Dumbledore maybe knows more than he lets on to these 11-year-olds.
So the reason, therefore, would be that Dumbledore knows that the stone is in jeopardy and probably talked to Flamel. He had it at Gringotts. I think it's mentioned later in the movie and the book that Flamel has enough elixir of life or whatever. Is that what it's called?
Yeah, elixir of life.
He had, you can make it with the stone and then hold on to it seems like, and drink it when you need it, basically. And so he doesn't have to always have the stone on him in order to stay alive. And later, after they decide to destroy it, he says he has enough elixir left to put his affairs in order or whatever, that sort of thing. So that would be why he doesn't need the stone necessarily all the time. Also, so I think between him and Dumbledore, they talked to Voldemort could be a problem. We should put this somewhere safer than Gringotts even. And and they say in the movie and the book, the only place safer than Gringotts is Hogwarts when Dumbledore's there. So that would be why the stone is at Hogwarts, because they think it's safer there and they know that that Voldemort's after it potentially.
And now something that I think is interesting about that too, now looking back, having read all of the books, obviously I couldn't have known this the very first time I read The Sorcerer's Stone, but Dumbledore is kind of a grand chess master.
Oh yeah. I think there's also the implication that Dumbledore puts it there knowing Voldemort will come there and that Harry will confront him. And that's very much later in the books becomes clear that Dumbledore has orchestrated all of this to some extent.
Yeah.
And that's where there's also, I think in 6 and 7, that's really, Harry has to come to terms with that sort of Dumbledore has used him almost to some extent. Kind of, and I remember that being a sort of a major issue later in something that Harry kind of tackles.
Yeah, it's something he has to grapple with later, but this is kind of the first time we see him as that chess master. Yeah. Because if it was just his intention to keep hiding the stone from Voldemort, wouldn't he fire Quirrell? Yeah,
because he's kind of, the implication is also, that he knows Quirrell is involved, because he knows that he wouldn't not know that one of his professors was, out canoodling with Voldemort. That's Dumbledore's a little wiser than that.
I don't know how anyone thought they could get that past Dumbledore. Yeah. I'm just going to bring Voldemort into the school under my turban.
There you go.
No one will know.
All right. So that's the answer to that question. Hopefully that clears that up.
This question they kind of answer in the movie, but it just wasn't satisfying to me, and maybe you can shed a little bit more light onto it. Why didn't Harry's uncle and aunt want him to go to Hogwarts? I know that they said they were trying to keep him from magic after the death of his parents, but they don't like him. It seems like a great solution to not only have him not be in their lives, but he'll still be taken care of and they don't have to feel guilty about just kicking him to the curb and having him die in a gutter somewhere. It would get him out of their life.
All right, so why are the Dursleys so adamant that Harry not go to Hogwarts and not be a wizard?
Oh boy, there are a lot of layers to this question.
A lot of layers, yeah.
So, one major thing, in my opinion, that got cut from the book when it was adapted is the whole, like, first 3/4 of the first chapter.
Yeah, the opening chapter before, because we jump in the movie right on Hagrid dropping Harry off at the Dursleys with McGonagall and as a cat sitting on the fence.
It opens with Dumbledore walking down the dark street. In the book, that doesn't happen until the end of the first chapter. Yeah. And that first chapter more or less follows Uncle Vernon throughout his day.
Yeah.
And the benefit that we get from that is that it establishes what kind of people the Dursleys are.
Yeah.
And it also establishes that Aunt Petunia hates her sister.
Yes.
Harry's mom. She hates her.
Yeah, they have a conversation about, because Vernon's becoming suspicious. Like, he's seeing all these people, and he's like in robes, because they're all celebrating that Voldemort's dead or gone. And he's like, and he hears one of them mention Harry, or the Potter boy.
Potters, yeah.
And he's like, what is that? And he doesn't remember what Harry's name is, so he asks her about it. And yeah, you get a little bit of back that, she's like super hates her sister.
Yeah, she super hates her sister, and they think that her sister and her husband are freaks.
Yeah.
Although we don't know why yet.
No, in the book at that point, we don't know.
Yeah, we don't know it's wizardry.
Yeah. So there's a lot of layers to it, and I think that sets it up a little more. I think the answer to that is they don't want him. They just don't like magic. They don't like the idea. They think I think a lot of that stems from Petunia and a jealousy thing, because she's not.
Yes.
I think a lot of her issues with her sister stemmed from jealousy.
Right, which is something we get into in a later book.
A little more.
But I think a simple answer is that they want to stamp the magic out of Harry, as they say in the book. Was that in the movie too? Stamp the magic?
Yeah, probably,
Stamp it out of him?
Yeah.
It's because of the type of people they are.
Yeah.
They're cruel, they're controlling, and they're terrified of anything they perceive as different.
Yes.
Is there a reason the staircases move? Or was that simply just a storytelling element to get them to a spot where they weren't supposed to be to further the story? It just seems like a horrible design flaw of any building, especially one with kids.
So the moving staircases are mentioned offhand in the book. I think it's mentioned once, maybe.
Yeah.
But they're not a plot element in the book. The movie uses them as such so that the kids can stumble upon Fluffy.
Yes.
That's not what happens in the book. So, in the book, they're roaming around the castle after hours because of the wizard's duel.
There's the whole storyline, which the wizard's duel is completely, the midnight duel is completely cut from the movie, and it's during the events of what the Remember All, which is in the movie, where Malfoy steals the Remember All, blah, blah, blah. I think that's when it happens, from what I remember. And but then after that all, and after Harry doesn't get expelled, they're at lunch like that day or something, or the next day, and Malfoy challenges him to a duel. Right,
Malfoy challenges him to a duel. He says, we'll meet
in the trophy
room after hours. But then it turns out that Malfoy was trying to set them up.
Yeah.
And Filch shows up.
Yeah, and they all run away. And Neville's actually there, I believe. Or
yeah,
maybe not. I think he might be.
I think he
because he was sleeping out and got stuck outside. Yeah. So they end up all running away from Filch, and end up the only place they can hide is behind this door that Hermione unlocks, similar in the movie. And then that's when they discover Fluffy. But it's just they're running from Filch because they were out for a duel that didn't happen.
Yeah, so they're not supposed to be up and out of bed, so they're trying to avoid getting in trouble.
Yeah, so the moving staircase is not, I mean, they are in the book, but they're not plot dependent. They don't do anything important. They just are a thing. I think maybe in a later book something might happen with them, but I can't. It's been a long time. I can't
Although I tend to agree about moving staircases being a bad idea.
Yeah, but it's fun. It's quirky.
It is fun.
It's a magical castle.
Yes. It's ambiance.
Yes.
Is Seamus Finnegan just unlucky, or is he actually messing up in such a way that he keeps blowing things up?
I mean, I would maybe a little unlucky and a little overeager.
Yeah. Yeah, so they make a running gag. I think it happens twice in the movie. Of him
and I think it happens in other movies as well.
It probably does. I don't remember. It's been a while since I've seen all the movies. But yeah, so in this movie, there's a moment where he's trying to turn water into rum, and it explodes, and like he gets singed. And then when they're doing Alohomora in the charms class, his feather explodes.
Wingardium Leviosa.
Wingardium Leviosa. His feather explodes, and So there's a moment in the book. There's a moment where in Charms, during they're making the feathers float, Seamus's feather catches fire, which is what happens in the book. And they just took that idea and expanded it to making it like explode.
Yeah.
And then did it again, so it had like a running gag.
Yeah.
Can a game of Quidditch end without the Seeker catching the snitch? If so, why does it have points?
I'm going to let you field this one, because you went off about this while we were watching the movie last night.
I have some feelings about this. So first, can a game of Quidditch end without the Seeker catching the snitch? The answer to that is no.
Yeah.
The game only ends when the Seeker catches the snitch. He mentions I think he mentioned in the movie, it's in the book, it's mentioned that the longest game, because that's the only way it can end, and it doesn't end until that happens, the longest game on record is 3 months.
Yeah, according to Oliver Wood.
According to Oliver Wood. And he says, I think the record is 3 months of a game that lasts 3 months, and people had to like go through shifts so they could sleep and that sort of thing. So games can last forever. And luckily in the books, all the ones we see last at, most an hour, it seems like. It has to catch a snitch for the game to end. But the reason it has points, I guess the second part of his question is, if so, why does it have points? Meaning, why does catching the snitch have points? Because catching the snitch doesn't mean your team wins. That means the game's over, but it doesn't mean your team wins, necessarily. From my recollection, every time if somebody scores with the quaffle, it's 10 points.
Yes.
So that's your soccer style part of the game, basketball, whatever. Every time you score, you get 10 points with the quaffle. So that goes back and forth. However many points you score. And then when somebody catches the snitch, their team gets 150 points and the game ends. So technically, one team could have 200 points and the other team could have 0. And I think this might happen in one of the later.
It happened when at the
World Cup.
At the World Cup.
Yes, because Crumb. Yeah. So the thing is that your team could be up by a ton, and then if the Seeker catches the snitch, you could still lose. Like because the other team could be so far ahead that even you catching the snitch is not enough to make up that difference. Now that almost never happens. Like I said, I think it happens in the World Cup or in the Quidditch.
And I mean, and my guess would be that it probably only happens at the professional level. Yeah, I would think.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. It just, so my problem with the game is I think it's poor design to have that much value on one thing. It just to me it feels like you overvalue the catching of the snitch to the point where 9 times out of 10, probably more than that, probably 95 times out of 100, whoever catches the snitch wins. To where
the rest of the points don't matter.
And it's everything else is made up and the points don't matter. Like, it just seems like if I was a chaser or a beater, I'd be like, what was I doing this whole time?
I don't think she's a sports person.
Right. To me, I think it would make a lot more sense if it was 80 points. It need to be about half of what it is so that you could get to a point where you could tweak it to a point where it just wasn't quite so valuable. And now it does seem like in certain levels it changes, like we're on the professional level where people are so good that maybe, see, to me though, that would be the professional level would be where it was the worst, because you wouldn't have runaway, like you would imagine on the professional level, the parity between teams would be close enough that teams wouldn't blow in terms of scoring with the quaffle, they wouldn't, like, nobody would pull ahead by like 200 points. Now it happens in the World Cup because apparently they're just that much better. But you would think that pretty often it would stay within 50 points. You know what I mean? Like, it would go back and forth a fair amount, because that's how most professional sports work. When you look in professional sports leagues, it's very rare for one team to completely blow out, in any sport, to completely blow out the other team. It happens, but it's rare. So that would make me think that then almost every professional game of Quidditch would be decided by who caught the snitch, because it is worth so many points. Yeah. Where I could see it would be better is at a lower skill level, because blowouts happen a lot in like high school football and stuff, and high school basketball, where one team is just way bigger and way better or whatever. And then if you had a really good Seeker, that's where you could make it up.
My final question, how did Quill complete or beat all of the challenges to get to the Sorcerer's Stone? Fluffy is obvious. That was answered. The Devil's Snare, we can assume he knew how to beat that just like Hermione did. But the keys, the flying keys, and chess, how did he do that? Chess in particular, since all but 3 of the white pieces were intact.
So the book doesn't address this specifically, right?
No, it doesn't, because we're with them.
Yes,
but we do know that we know the key thing. He just catches it because Harry's able to see a key with a damaged wing in the book. I think that's how it happens in the movie too. I can't remember. We just watched it last night. I forgot. Yeah. But and so he sees so that he saw that that one's already been caught, and so that's how he knows to go catch that one.
Yeah.
So Quirrell just catches the key.
I think there are two implications here, like two main implications, even though the book doesn't directly say how he gets past each and every layer of protection. One is that we know he tricked Hagrid into revealing how to get past Fluffy.
And he says, Trevor said, that one's obvious, because he got the harp.
So it's possible that he was able to do that with some of the other professors as well. Right. The other thing we know is that Quirrell is a much older and more accomplished wizard than any of the kids. Yeah. And he also happens to have another incredibly powerful wizard living in his head.
Yes. I think that's the biggest thing, is that it doesn't matter because Voldemort is in him. Yeah. And Voldemort could get past any of that stuff so here, let's go through it. So the with the plant, it's easy. You just know it doesn't like light/heat.
That seems like a really easy one.
Really easy.
For a lot of people.
Anybody would know that. Yeah. You would think most people would know how to get that. So that's how he does that. He uses the harp for Fluffy, the light to get past the plant, catches the key, just uses the broom, let's assume, and catches it. Then we get to the chess set, which I don't know if that's the right order in the book, but I think it is. He gets to the chess set. So in the movie, when they get there are 3 empty spots. Well, the 2 empty spots and then no rider on the knight. And they fill those 3 spots. In the book, what they do is they get to the room and then they go and they they basically move 3 pieces off the board and take those spots. So my thought could be, one, maybe he could just figure out a way to blast or just get right past the chess set doesn't even play. Yeah. The other thing could just be, you can play with however many. It doesn't have to be, because in the movie there are 3 open spaces, but in the book, if he walks in and it's all set up, he just moves 1 piece away and then plays the game the way they did, except he just doesn't have 2 other people with him. So then he just beats chess. Boom. That's how he gets past that. The other things in the book, they cut, or in the movie, they cut the troll from Defense Against the Dark Arts.
Yeah, Quirrell puts a troll.
A troll in the in a room with a troll, and he got, it's like unconscious when they walk past it, so he just knocked it out somehow. Used a spell, knocked it out. Doesn't matter. And then the potion drinking, the potion part where it's like a logic puzzle, basically of trying to figure out which potion you're supposed to drink, and the implication there is that he just figures it out. I mean, it's not that hard. You can sit there and you have to be kind of smart, but it's take a few minutes to sort out. If Hermione can do it, a wizard with Voldemort in his head could surely figure it out. But again, those aren't in the troll and the potion aren't in the movie, so even not really talking about that. But the chess set, he just played chess probably. Those are all the questions he had. Let's let him plug his show now.
Thank you guys so much for letting me be a part of the podcast. Big fan. Can't wait for the next episode, the next movie. Shameless plug. I have a podcast of my own. It's called The Creative Cheapskate. It is creative ways of helping you save money in 5 minutes or less. Download it now on your favorite podcast app or at kcmq.com.
Thank you, Trevor. We love you. All right, let's move on to Better in the Book.
You like to read?
Oh, yes. I love to read.
What do you like to read?
Everything.
So we're going to go into 3 segments here. Better in the Book, Better in the Movie. The movie nailed it, and then we'll probably have a little bit of general discussion. And then we're going to wrap it up with our final verdict. Katie, what do you have for Better in the Book? I have a lot.
I have a fair few things. My first thing we already talked about, which is the way that the movie starts.
Yeah.
Dumbledore walking mysteriously down a dark street, I think makes for a compelling opening. It's got some mystery to it. Yeah. But as we saw from Trevor's questions, I think we lose a lot from not having establishment. From not having that establishment with the Dursleys.
Yeah, you definitely do. I think that they try to compensate for that a bit by giving Petunia more during the Hagrid scene on the rock. I don't think she says as much in the book in that scene. I think Vernon is the only one that talks pretty much during that scene, where in the movie Petunia goes off on a little rant about her sister and how awful she is.
She has a similar rant in the book.
Okay. But so that was the main part where you were supposed to get that kind of background from that. But yeah, they dropped the whole establishment of the Dursleys. I think it makes sense. Like you said, it's much more compelling and interesting for a wizard guy in a big robe and beard and hair to be putting out lights and walking down a dark street. Is more intriguing. A better cold open than watching Vernon Dursley go about his daily life. Like, so I understand why they changed it. But yeah, you do lose some from that not being there.
And while we're on the subject, the lamplighter.
Yeah, the put-outer.
The put-outer. So in the book, it just like he clicks it and the lights go out.
Yeah.
And in the movie, they like zoom to the little thing.
Device, yeah.
And I'm like, I get it. It looks cool. Or at least it did in 2001.
Yeah.
But also, if you were trying to be discreet, which I assume you are.
Yes.
Because you're putting out all the lights.
It's not particularly
discreet.
No.
If I saw little lights zooming down the street, I would go to the window and be like, what is that?
What the heck is that? The aliens are here. Yeah, that's true. Speaking of the Dursleys, there was a change. There's a line in the book that I really like that they dropped from, so it's about smeltings, and they dropped smeltings completely from this from the movie, or at least in this one, it's not mentioned. I think we see him in the third movie in his smeltings outfit potentially.
There is a scene where he has a smeltings uniform on. I want to talk about that in a second.
Okay, but there's a great line in the book about how she's talking about the narrator, the voice of the not the narrator, but the book. What is that called? The voice of whoever. It's not like somebody talking. It's whatever.
The narration.
The narration says is describing the smeltings outfit, and talks about he has a walking stick, and the line is they have smelting sticks that are used to hit each other with, which is supposedly really good training for later in life, or something like that. Which is a really funny line to me. And now it's not, nobody says it, so you couldn't really translate it into the movie since the movie doesn't have a voiceover or a narrator or anything like that. But it's just a line that I thought was, I don't know, particularly funny. So.
What are they training them for?
Yeah, well, I just think it's a good commentary on, this sort of prep school training student, or bringing up and sort of creating a culture of solving problems with violence. And it's just sort of a commentary on how, since it is like a prep school, these people go on to become politicians and
it's very frat boy.
Yes. Yeah. I think the implication is these are the people who end up becoming, all of the big business people and the politicians. And then, so it's sort of a commentary on that. Yeah. Sort of, learning to solve problems with violence very early in life.
Yeah. But he is in his smeltings uniform when Harry initially gets that first letter. Yeah. And I thought that was interesting. I'd never noticed it before. They show Dudley in his smeltings uniform, and they show Aunt Petunia in the background dyeing things gray for Harry to wear to the school that he was going to go to.
Stonewall Public or whatever.
Something, the public school, basically.
I think it's called Stonewall.
And I thought that was interesting because they show that, but they don't, explain it at all. Yeah. And I wonder if there was, a cut scene or if they just did that for book people.
Yeah, so it could be both. We meant to mention this at the beginning. All of the movies, as we watch them, will be the theatrical cut. So some of the stuff we say, that wasn't in the movie, but that was in the book. Some of the stuff will have been in, deleted scenes. And that there are probably moments that we're going to be like, they didn't have this where it was in the movie, but it was a deleted scene or something like that. So we're not talking about that. We're talking about the theatrical versions of the film if you went and saw them in theaters or if you watched the normal Blu-ray or DVD.
Well, yeah, I think the theatrical versions are good to stick with because those are the ones that the majority of people
and that's what most people have seen. So, there may be a deleted scene where they talk about
there might be
the smeltings and that sort of thing. I wouldn't be surprised if there was. There was a lot of deleted scenes in these, as there is in most movies, but. Also, but going back to that point, I think that is a common thing too when you're doing adaptations, is to throw little things that you don't overtly mention as little Easter eggs for the book readers, like, the smelting outfit. Yeah. Even though they never talk about it and it's never brought up. One of the things that I want to mention is, and this is an overarching thing, is how good in the books that J.K. Rowling is at teasing and setting up things.
Oh my God.
6 books down the line.
This is probably the thing that I admire most about these books.
Yes.
Like, novel planning is hard, you guys.
Yeah.
It is hard. I can barely even plan one novel ahead of itself, and she did 7.
Straight up 7. Like, there's stuff from this little things from the first book that are just complete throwaways.
Just little things that you wouldn't even notice, and then they pay off 7 books later.
Yeah, it's like 6 books later, 7 books later. Yeah, it's wild. One of those things, and the reason I brought it up, one of those things is when they get to Gringotts, when Hagrid and Harry get to Gringotts to go get his money, and they're riding through the cart. In the book, Hagrid mentions that they use their dragons, or somehow it comes up that there are dragons protecting it, or whatever. So it's certain dragons, that there are dragons in Gringotts. And while they're riding the cart, Harry sees a burst of flame out of the side of his eye, and looks and tries to see it, and then he doesn't see a dragon, because they're flying along so fast. They dropped that from the movie. The mention of the dragons at Gringotts,
it doesn't come up,
and Harry seeing fire down a hallway or whatever, that's not mentioned. But that is one of the ones that pays off, because in book 7 they ride a motherfucking dragon out of Gringotts. So I thought that was wild. That just again that little throwaway line about dragons protecting the gold, and then he sees a flash of fire. That comes back in book 7. So when he gets to Ollivanders, one of the things I like a lot about Ollivander in the movie, but I like in the book, and now I know why they changed this, but I like in the book that every wand he tries just does nothing until he gets the right wand.
Really? I had the opposite note.
Really? You like that they...
Well, I mean, I don't know if it's necessarily better. I just thought that, like, for a visual medium...
I agree, and I know why they changed it, and I think it makes perfect sense for a movie. Oh, of course, that was a very obvious change. That is 100% what you do, where every time he tries a wand, it shoots off and breaks something or whatever. That makes, I'm on board. I just like in the book that every time he grabs one, like nothing, because it also helps play into Harry's insecurity. Which is a big part of it, where he still feels like this is all like this is a mistake. I'm not a wizard, and I like that in that moment when he's trying the wands, nothing's happening. You can tell that that's building. He's like, it just builds more on his insecurity, which I think the books do a lot better throughout, which actually makes him feel a lot more sympathetic. Because I know a big comment, or a thing people say a lot about the movies is how Harry feels whiny at times and that sort of thing, which I never felt that way in the book. And I think it's because we get more of his insecurities and what he's feeling kind of in the book. So it's more understandable when he has angry outbursts, or when he, especially come like book 5 and that sort of thing, 4 and 5, when he starts having more personal drama between people. And I just like that in the wand scene where just nothing's happening and just Ollivander's just immediately pulling the wands out of his hand.
No, I think that,
But you're right. Have to change that. It would be dumb and it wouldn't work.
It would be very uninteresting. Yeah. Just watching that.
Although I think you could do it in a fun way, where he just hands him the wand and nothing happens, immediately pulls it back out, and Harry's like, what? And they just keep doing it. Yeah, but...
I'm going to backtrack just a little bit. I wanted to bring up the part where Hagrid comes to the hut where the Dursleys are trying to hide.
Oh, on the rock, where they're hiding?
Yeah, where they're trying to hide. When he tells Harry that he's a wizard, and Hagrid and Uncle Vernon kind of have a
back and forth.
Yeah, a little back and forth. I think that was way better done in the book.
Could be.
There was a lot more to it. And I felt like Hagrid had, like, more passion the way that the book presented it. Yeah. Like, he got more upset by it. Yeah. And then Uncle Vernon just, like, keeps trying to keep him from saying it. Right. And it really, like, ratchets up the tension. Yeah. And then all of a sudden it just drops. And he says, "You're a wizard, Harry." Yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah, the build up to... No, he says, "Harry, you're a wizard."
That's true.
That's the big change.
They flipped it for the movie.
I have that in my better in the movie. Because I actually think... It's not even necessarily that it's better in the movie. It's just it's become so iconic at this point. So you're a wizard, Harry. But in the book, it is, "Harry, you're a wizard." I just happen to make note of that. But yeah, no, I think you're right. I think the book does a really good job of building up the tension to that scene of the reveal of "You're a wizard." it's not quite as, it doesn't build for quite as long.
Yeah, it doesn't
movie.
build quite as long and quite as well for me in the movie.
I have a change about that scene that the movie made that I want to talk about in better in the movie, though, that I think is good, but we'll get to that.
So I can actually go back to Diagon Alley.
Okay.
Then, and I know you mentioned that you thought there was a deleted scene of this.
I think there may be, but I've watched some of the deleted scenes years ago, but I don't remember.
But in the book, he meets Malfoy in Diagon Alley.
But we don't know it's Malfoy.
Yeah, we don't know it's Malfoy. They're getting fitted for robes.
Yeah.
And of course, Malfoy is a little shit.
Yeah.
But I felt like it was important, like that exposition that we get from that scene was important.
Yeah.
And was better suited to where it happened in the grand scheme of things, because they kind of like disperse the information that we get from that scene throughout the next 20 minutes or so.
Yeah. Yeah, in the book they meet a couple times. He meets then, and he doesn't know who this kid is, but and it's Malfoy just talking about how they shouldn't let Muggle-born people in to Hogwarts and that sort of stuff. And we just get the vibe that this kid's a fucking prick, and basically race their version.
He's racist.
Yeah, he's racist.
He's the racist metaphor.
Yeah, he's the racist metaphor. And yeah, so I think, and they don't really do that quite as much. They have the one scene in the movie where they're on the stairs in front of everybody, which actually happens on the train in the book. But yeah, I think that was a good scene, and I think it might be a deleted scene, but I'm not positive. But yeah, it's a bummer that they dropped that.
Yeah.
Because this one thing we were talking about while we were watching it, because this is the shortest book, this movie was able to include most of it.
Yes.
They drop a handful of things, but most of the book is in this.
Yeah, most of it is intact.
Yeah, and this movie is like 2.5 hours long, as like all of them are about 2.5 hours to 3 hours long. And since they're all the same length, but every book gets 100 pages longer, basically, this one was the closest to the book because they had the least book to work with to cram into 2.5 hours. So.
And they even had room for delightful little, world building things. Like caroling ghosts.
Yeah, like caroling ghosts.
Caroling ghosts. Love that. Anyway, similar to how I felt like we missed that exposition from the scene with Malfoy in Diagon Alley, I felt like it made more sense for Hagrid to tell Harry his own backstory before they went wizard shopping. It kind of annoys me that he tells him all that stuff after they go shopping for everything in the movie. Oh, yeah.
Wait, you say his own backstory? What do you mean?
Like about how his parents died,
right,
yes, and all that.
Right, because Hagrid tells him all that at the hut on the rock in the book, and he waits until after. In the movie, which is...
I feel bad for Harry walking around Diagon Alley not knowing his own backstory, and everybody keeps bringing it up to him.
Yeah, and I think they did that they thought it was interesting for us as viewers to go, why are they all... what's the big deal about him? Yeah. Because when you're watching the movie at that point, you don't know. And that's kind of the thing that you get with... Yeah. Anyways, I agree. But they do that so that we're trying to figure the mystery to build tension,
to build mystery.
Why is everybody? But because in the book we just know we've been told at this point that Voldemort tried to kill his parents and then disappeared. They make an interesting change with Quirrell where he's in the book or in the movie he's already possessed, or Voldemort is already inside of him when him and Harry meet.
Yeah, that's the implication.
Alley. Yeah, in the book, that's not the case. Voldemort has not fused with Quirrell yet because Quirrell isn't wearing a turban, or at least it's not mentioned, and is able to shake his hand. Like, he shakes his hand several times. And later on in the book, they make it clear that when the attempt to steal the stone from the vault failed, that's when Voldemort decided to fuse with Quirrell so that he could keep an eye on him or whatever. But I thought it was interesting that they changed that in the movie, and I think I like it more in the book because I know why they changed it in the movie. It gives us it provides suspicion for Quirrell when he won't shake his hand. It gives you a clue. It gives the viewer a little bit of a clue that we don't really get in the book.
Yeah.
And now there's still not, I don't think there are still not quite enough clues that I think it would be very hard pressed that anybody watching this the first time would have been like, it's actually Quirrell and not Snape. There are, I mean, it's all there. Like every time, when Harry looks past the turban and looks at Snape and then his scar hurts, like you see Quirrell right there. And when they knock over Snape, or when she lights Snape on fire and he stops the curse, you see her knock over Quirrell while she's doing it. Like that's all there. So you can put it together, but you would have to, I would be impressed if anybody actually did without knowing what the twist was. I don't like that the movie drops, it's a little thing and it's dumb that they don't mention the wand dimensions and stuff, or like what type of wood they're made out of. Like,
that he doesn't give him the specs.
Yeah, the specs of the wand. I always like that in the book, and I think it would make sense for the movie just from a toy selling perspective to be like, yeah, because in the book it's always the length of the wand, what type of wood it's made out of, and what type of core it has.
Yeah.
And I just thought it was interesting that they don't. They mention the core, because that's important with Harry's wand. But yeah, they don't do the rest of it. And I was like, why would you not? Just feel like it'd be a good way to just sell more toys. I don't know. But
well, they are now.
Yeah.
You can go to the Wizarding World of Harry Potter.
Right.
I got fitted for a wand.
That wand was
at the Wizarding World of Harry Potter.
That was in our Instagram post.
Yeah, it was in one of our promo pictures for this. I'm going to jump ahead to when they get to Hogwarts.
Okay, well then let me do one more real quick. I have two things. One, Hagrid says this line in the book and he doesn't say it in the movie. And I think you mentioned this, that Hagrid says, don't know if Voldemort had enough human left in him to die.
Oh, which is something that pays off 5-6 books later.
And I don't believe he says that in the movie. I think they
No, he doesn't.
Yeah. And then one other thing. So this is right as he's going to Hogwarts, the platform 9 3/4 thing. In the book, Harry goes with Hagrid, buys all of his equipment, and then goes back home to the Dursleys for like a month.
Right, because we know it's July 31st.
Yeah, we know it's July 31st when he goes and does all this stuff, or August 1st, I guess, because it's the day after his birthday. When he goes and buys all this stuff, and then he goes home and waits for like a month, and then goes to platform 9 3/4 to go to school. In the movie, Hagrid comes and picks him up on his birthday, and then immediately from there, after they buy all this stuff, he goes to get the train to go to school, and that doesn't make any sense. Now,
I get why they cut it.
I get why they trimmed that and just go, okay, let's not have him go sit around at the Dursleys for a month. Like there's no point. But it doesn't make sense because it would still be August 1st, and we know the school doesn't start on what school starts on August 1st?
No school that I want any part of.
Yeah. So I thought that was a weird. I mean, I get it, but I thought it was funny.
Yeah. So jumping ahead, when he gets to Hogwarts, I get why the movie cut this, and I don't think it's unforgivable, but I miss Peeves.
Yes, I have Peeves.
I like Peeves the poltergeist.
Yeah. No Peeves in any of the movies. I mean, he might show up in one of the later ones, like in passing. Yeah, maybe. But I don't remember.
But he is not a major part of this book, but...
No. He's important. And he has plot elements.
Yeah, he moves the plot along a couple times.
Points, yeah. And even more so in later books, I think, to some extent, from what I remember. Yeah, they just dropped him. It's just, it's one of those things where they had to decide what you can't show everything, you can't put everything in, and he's a character that is expendable, ultimately. But yeah, I do wish they had left Peeves in. Peeves is fun.
Yeah, I think he's interesting.
Yeah, I think it adds a lot of I think you could add a fair and good bit of comedy throughout the film. That, I mean, their jokes are still there and stuff, and it's still funny movies, But yeah, R.I.P. Peeves twice. R.I.P. Peeves. I want to talk about the money. The money in the book is way more interesting. I don't know why they never show any of it in the movie. They just show, so when he goes and gets the money out of his vault, it's just a giant stack of gold coins.
Yeah.
And when he pays for the candy on the train, it's just gold
it's like
coins.
He's got pirate gold.
Yeah, it just looks like pirate gold. And in the book,
there's actually a money system.
There's a currency system. Yeah. I'm not saying they need to go into the currency system, but it just seems like they put very little time or effort into the money because, in the book, so it's gold galleons are the biggest currency. Mm-hmm. Then it's silver sickles, which are slightly smaller, and then bronze nuts. And bronze nuts are square.
Yeah.
And I thought that would be interesting to have like, why don't none of the coins we see are ever square?
Yeah,
They're always,
it would
it's just
have been
like
really
gold
interesting.
doubloons. And I'm like, it just seemed lazy. Well, like, with so much other stuff is really good, it just seemed like a lazy thing.
No,
to
you're
not-
right, because they don't have to, like, go into it.
No.
Like, we don't need a lesson on wizard currency, but they could have at least showed it.
Yeah, they could have showed it when he pays, like, other than, it literally just looks like he's paying with a bunch of, like, just generic, like,
doubloons.
like, not even particularly good. They're all, like, super brand new and shiny, too. Like, they don't look used. Like, it looks, I guess, to be fair, they've been sitting in a vault. I don't know. It was a little disappointing.
Maybe there's a Gringotts goblin that, like, polishes all
it
the money.
Or it's probably magic. It just magically is cleaned when
Yeah.
it sits in a vault. Sure. Okay.
Here's the thing that annoys me in the movie that has always annoyed me. During the sorting ceremony, and I get it, because you're trying to get all your main characters up there in a short amount of time, but they don't call them in alphabetical order.
No, just
and
go
that
right
makes
to Granger.
no sense.
Yes.
It makes no sense.
They just cut everybody other than the people we care about.
Yeah, and
Like,
that one random Hufflepuff girl.
And one right. Is it Bone? No.
Yeah.
Amelia Bones or Susan Bones?
It's Susan Bones,
Susan
I
Bones,
think, yeah.
Yeah. Which, they just cut straight to the people we care about.
Yeah.
But it's funny, why wouldn't they just do Bones first? She is the first in the book, I think.
I think you're right.
Because she's B, Bones. Like, I think that's why she's, like, the first person sorted in the book. They should have just done her first and then skip to Gray. I don't know. But yeah, they don't go on. So, speaking on the sorting hat, and we were talking about this last night, it makes no sense in the movie, and this is a weird change. In the movie, the hat speaks. Its mouth moves. It has a mouth, which it does in the book, which is how it sings its song, which is a thing I'll talk about better in the movie. But its mouth moves in the book. In the movie, its mouth moves like it's talking when it's talking to the people that it's sorting. And now in the book, they just hear the voice in their head, and there's not only no implication that it's saying that to everybody, it's definitely not saying that to everybody, because they have conversations in later books where Harry discusses what the sorting hat said to him, because it's like a thing that weighs on him throughout the course of the books. And so nobody else knows, nobody else heard that, and it's very strange. But I don't understand in the movie if it is supposed to be that everybody's hearing that, or if that's not the case, why is its mouth moving? I thought it was a very strange change to have it talk out loud while sorting them.
To be honest, I have always hated the movie version of the sorting hat.
Yeah.
I don't like that it speaks out loud. I don't like the way that it looks.
Yeah.
I don't like that they gave it weird eyes.
Yeah, it's not the most successful translation.
Yeah.
Because the movie does a lot of those right, and that's not one of them.
I also, when I first read the books, imagined the sorting hat female. So maybe I was just a little disappointed by that.
Yeah.
Never liked the sorting hat. It's better in the book.
Yep. One thing they cut real quick, they cut the mention of Nicholas Flamel on the
on the train.
chocolate card,
Yeah,
on the
they
chocolate
did.
frog card, because that's a setup. Mm-hmm. Because Harry keeps going throughout the course of the movie or the book. I know I've heard that name somewhere.
Yeah, he keeps saying, I know I've read it. I know
and it's
I've read
because
it.
he read it on the Albus Dumbledore's chocolate frog card. Chocolate frog card. But that's not how they figure it out later. Eventually, that is how they figure it out, because he gets another one, and that's where he's like, oh shit, Flamel. There it is.
Yeah.
That's where I remember it from. But they cut that from the movie, which I thought was interesting, because I like that little setup, that little seed of information. Because it also, the same thing can happen to you as a reader, is when they say Flamel, you're like, have I heard that name before? And then, you can go back and be like, oh, that's one. They cut Dumbledore's opening remarks. I don't like that. For the feast. He has, I think it also, because here, so Dumbledore has his opening remarks in the movie, but he's like, he says for the banquet, he says like, the Forbidden Force is forbidden.
Yes.
And don't go to the third floor corridor or whatever. But
that's where Fluffy is, even though we don't know that yet.
In the book, and I think this sets up more of Dumbledore's quirkiness, his opening remarks before they eat are, welcome to New Year, Hogwarts. Before we begin our banquet, I'd like to say a few words. And here they are. Nitwit, Blubber, Oddment, Tweak. Thank you. And then they start eating. Like, I don't like that they don't have that. It's such a short thing. I guess people just wouldn't understand it and like get it. But I don't know. I thought it established his weirdness and sort of how odd he is.
It does. I will say, as a kid, I was mildly confused by that, because I thought maybe they were like supposed to be magic words that he was saying to make the food appear.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is weird. I don't get it.
Yeah. So that's probably why they cut it. They worried people would be like, "What was that supposed to mean? Something?" Like, was that? And the point is that no, it's just
he's just saying
weird
silly words
because he enjoys it. This is an unforgivable change, in my opinion. Not really, and I get why they did it, but I love this in the book, and it's so silly, and I was disappointed that they changed it. The entrance to the Gryffindor common room in the movie is just an arched doorway. In the book, it is a hole in the wall that is 4 feet off the ground that you have to crawl through. And I love that. I just love the idea of that every time they go into the common room, they have to crawl through a hole in the wall. That's how it's described in the book. It is a circular hole in the wall 4 feet off the ground. And I don't know. I just like that they have to like crawl through a tunnel to get into there. That would be annoying.
Yeah,
like,
it would.
Kind of traipsing all over the castle all day, going to classes, and you get back and you got all your books with you, and you're
trying to carry all your books and
you're
all
like,
your
God, I
stuff.
gotta climb through this fucking hole. So they just make it a doorway in the movie, but I was like, come on, it's so much fun.
Movie Oliver Wood explains the rules of Quidditch wrong.
Yes, I have. This is my next note. I was like, what? Why did you do that? And now, again, back to my point, it's usually correct. But so he explains Oliver Wood's explaining the rules to Harry about Quidditch, and he says, this final ball, this is the snitch. You catch this ball, and the game's over. You catch this, Potter, and we win.
But not necessarily.
Oliver Wood, that is not the rules. That's not how it necessarily works. Usually, sure, you say, you catch this, we usually win. It's not as interesting. It's not as good of a punchy line to like, whoa, make it sound cool, but it's also not correct. So, yeah. Thought it was funny. The movie cuts, and now she uses it to light Snape's robes on fire. But in the book, there's a couple times mentioned that Hermione makes a little fire in a jar that they carry around to keep warm, and they don't ever show that in the movie. And I thought, it's not an important element.
Yeah, it's a little thing.
But it's a little thing that's world building to me, and also helps develop Hermione's character, where as they over the course of their relationship throughout the years, she becomes more and more willing to break rules and that sort of thing. And I think that her carrying around a little magic fire is part of that. And it's just a little disappointed that they cut it out. Again, it's like one moment in the book but I don't know. I wish they had that. Because again, they wouldn't have to do anything with it. They could just show them standing around at one time.
Another small inconsequential thing that annoyed me, that I don't know why they bothered to change it. So the guy that Hagrid says he got Fluffy from, in the movie they say it's an Irish guy.
Yeah.
And in the book it's a Greek guy because that's the reference. That's the mythology reference.
Right.
It's Cerberus, the
Cerberus,
three-headed
the dog.
dog. Why bother changing that?
My only thought, and I don't know how they would necessarily have known this when they were filming. I guess they could. My thought was that it's a tip, it's a nod, like an inside joke to production, that maybe they knew who the person who was going to be designing the creature or something, or how Fluffy looked in the movie, like the art director that was going to be designing Fluffy, the creature creator, whatever, was an Irish guy. And so maybe that's like a little like
an inside
nod to him would be my only thought for why they would make that change. Because I don't. Or maybe they were also worried about potentially offending people, like the implication maybe like he got some black market thing from a Greek person sounds a little like weirder than like from an Irish guy. Like for a British guy to say that, maybe.
I guess so.
Would be my other thought.
It bothers me because, well, first of all, it just seems like a random thing
really
like a weird random change to make. But also because probably the second thing that I love the most about this series in general is all of the references to other things. And that was something that I loved a lot growing up, because I liked to read mythology and fairy tales and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. And I loved seeing those little Easter eggs in the book. So it annoyed me. Yeah.
There's more Quidditch in the book.
Yes,
now, I know why they dropped it from the movie. Because once you've seen one Quidditch match, I don't know how much you need to... And it's expensive to animate, I'm sure, and to film like comparatively. It's not cheap, I'm sure. And yeah, once you've seen one, you're pretty much good. But that's the thing throughout as the movies go forward. In every book, we get almost all the Quidditch matches, unless Harry misses it for some reason. Yeah. We kind of read all of the matches take place. But yeah, they only show the first one in this one, which I guess there's only 2 in the book in this first.
Yeah,
book,
there's 2 in the book. I think
because he's in the hospital for the third one.
That's right. Yeah.
The third one takes place after he at the end of the semester after he confronts Voldemort and is in a coma, basically. And
we get like a handful of other Quidditch matches in the other movies, but the movies phase it out even more than the books do.
They phase it out even more than the books, and the books phase it out as well.
Yeah.
So I can't believe they cut this line from the movie, but now I know why. It was funny because we were watching the movie and go, why would they get rid of that line? It's hilarious. And then they showed the outside of Hagrid's house, and I go, oh, that's why they got rid of the line. So there's a moment where after Hagrid gets the dragon egg, and, you know, he gets a dragon egg, and he's always wanted a dragon. It's hatching or whatever. Hermione has a line in the book where she just turns to Hagrid and goes, Hagrid, you live in a wooden house. And it's such a good, and little Emma Watson would have crushed that delivery because she's so good. She's great in this movie, but she's also just really good at like the sassy, like smart ass.
It's such a Hermione line too, because it is sassy, but it's also so pragmatic.
It's so pragmatic. Like, you live in a wooden house.
Of course, you can't have a dragon.
And they cut it, and we were like, why would they cut that line? And then it cuts to the exterior, and it's because it's stone in this movie. They made his hut stone in the movie for aesthetic reasons. I'm sure they just thought a stone hut looked cool. So yeah, they can't say you live in a wooden house when he lives in a stone house. Disappointing.
Speaking of Norbert, the Norwegian Ridgeback, the movie cuts most of the dragon stuff.
They condense it to like one scene and one moment.
Whereas in the book, there's a whole chapter.
There's a whole chapter about it.
Dealing with this problem of the dragon.
And it goes on for a couple weeks.
Yeah.
Or months, maybe.
And I understand why they cut all that down.
Yeah.
Like, I get it. But I do think that the moving parts of that section of the story work better in the book.
I agree. It does all kind of come out of nowhere in the movie. It's just like, you have a dragon. Oh, it's hatching right now. Oh, Malfoy was staring in through the window. Oh, and you all get in trouble for being at Hagrid's late at night.
Yeah.
It's very strange because in the book, there's a whole mission where they take the dragon and they take it to the highest tower so that Charlie's friends can come and pick it up and take it to Romania.
They smuggle an illegal dragon.
The dragon, so that Hagrid doesn't get in trouble. And that's when they get caught because Malfoy finds out because the letter with the plans was in a book that Malfoy took from some. A lot of stuff happens. But they trim that all down to just when they were down seeing the dragon hatch, it was after hours, so they get detention for it. I don't know. Strange.
And it seems like McGonagall blows it way more out of proportion in the book than she does, or in the movie than she does in the book.
She still does in the book. I have a big problem with her reaction to that whole thing. I thought was so dumb.
Here's my take on it. Because she says 50 points from Gryffindor.
Yeah.
And then they're like, 50 points, and then she says 50 points each. And I always felt like she wasn't gonna do 50 points each, but then they said something.
Right. But still, so I also have a big problem with the points in this. Like, the points just ratchet up from, like, in the first thing, they're getting like a point for stuff, and then by the end, everything is 50 points. It feels like. I know you're a teacher.
Okay.
I'll let you get to that in a second. But no, McGonagall's reaction to them, literally what they were in trouble for in the book and in the movie, is being out of bed after hours.
Yeah.
Their broke curfew. She is furious, and she in the book says, "I've never been more ashamed of a student." And I'm like, but for being out of bed at night, that's this train. I don't understand. And then they get, so not only do they lose all these points, but they also get detention for being out of bed one night once. And I'm like, this is a boarding school with a bunch of pubescent teenagers. I assure you, there are a lot of them out of bed all the time. Like, it's so, I don't know. I thought her reaction is way over the top in both of them, but it makes more sense in the book, I guess, because I don't know.
I think it does make more sense in the book, because they also say that they're in the astronomy tower, and the astronomy tower is out of bounds even like during daylight hours, unless you're in class.
Yeah.
So there's that too. But also, regarding the points, I'm a teacher. And I teach higher ed, so I can only imagine that this is even more so for high school, middle school, elementary school. By the end of the semester, by the end of the school year, you have to keep escalating the punishments and the rewards because they mean less as you go on. So you have to keep escalating it. I haven't found a way around it yet.
Well, there you go. So at least that part where the points just ratcheting up from 1 to 50 for everything at least makes sense.
Real quick, before we move into the climax of the book, I hate that when Harry goes to the restricted section of the library, a face comes out of the book. Yeah. I hate that.
It's weird. In the book, it just screams.
Yeah, which I think is way creepier.
Yeah.
And also the face doesn't even look that good. And I know it was 2001, but it doesn't even look that good.
Yeah. They cut a lot of the centaurs, which is a little disappointing in the movie. The book has a lot more with other centaurs and their discussion. And that
sets up the centaurs for much later in the series.
Which they come back, they come back in the movies, but again, not as much as they do in the book. I also just like Hagrid's sort of conversation with them in the book where he's like, fucking centaurs. Like, it's like you're trying to get a straight answer out of them, and they just keep staring up at the... Like, it's played very comically in the book of how, like, he keeps asking them, like, but have you seen anything? And he's like, Mars is really bright tonight.
They're very...
and Hagrid's like... Fuck.
They're very spacey, both literally and figuratively.
Yeah, and I love, too, because then another centaur walks up and he goes, hey, friends, whatever. And then he goes, have you seen anything weird? And then that centaur goes, Mars is awfully bright tonight. It's just like... Also, they cut the part... in the book, friends, Bane, whichever one that Harry becomes friends with, kind of, tells Harry that it's been foretold that Voldemort's going to kill him. Yeah. And that's not in the movie, and that's important because it's true. That's what happens. Spoiler. So the centaurs were right.
Of course they were right. They spend all their time looking at the stars, man.
I don't like in the book, so this is the climax where they're going to go through the trapdoor. I don't like in the movie that Harry basically tells them, we're going down the trapdoor tonight. Yeah. Because it's not within his character. It doesn't... The book does it differently, and it's much more serving to Harry's character. In the book, Harry goes, I'm going down the trapdoor tonight. Mm-hmm. I'm going to do this. And Ron and Hermione insist on going with him.
Yes, which is important to their dynamic. Yes. As well as their characters.
Yes, I think it's important because Harry is always is very...
he's the classic hero.
Yeah, he's the classic hero. He doesn't want other people to be put in danger. He'll do it. But then their friendship, it's a good friendship moment where they're like, no, we're coming with you, you know? And it's weird in the book or in the movie, he's just like, we're going down the trapdoor tonight. And there's not that moment of him, you know, being like, I'm going to do it. Because he does have a bit of a hero thing. Like, he's like, I'll do it. And it's not like a conscious, like, vanity thing. It's just sort of how he is. He's like, I got to save the day.
So then they go down the trapdoor. Mm-hmm. And always hated that Hermione, like, makes the sun appear. Yeah. Instead of just lighting a fire.
Because, again, she uses the fire to get the plants. And there's also a great line in the book. And now I know we were discussing this last night when we were watching the movie. I think I know why they changed it. But in the book, they're all stuck. And Hermione goes, oh, we need fire. They don't like heat and light. And somebody says, we'll light a fire. And Hermione says, there's no wood. Which is a really funny moment. In the book, she just, like, Ron freaks out, and she just
does the thing.
She just, Lumos Maxima.
Like, she has a second where she's trying to remember, like, what the rhyme is. Yeah. But
she just does a thing. And so, in the book, it's sort of, I think the reason they changed it in the movie is that it gives her a stronger moment where it's just her solving this problem. Mm-hmm. And in the movie, they each kind of have their moment where Hermione solves the problem with the plant. Mm-hmm. That's her moment of contributing. Ron wins chess. That's his moment of contributing. Harry catches the key and then ultimately confronts Voldemort. That's his part. So they all kind of play a role. In the book, Hermione doesn't... She does. It's the potions in the book, but they cut that. Yes. So... They gave her more of a contribution in where she doesn't lose her head and go, there's no wood. Right. That would rob her moment from her if they did that in the movie. They change it so she just knows and acts and is competent, which is fine. It's a good I like the joke of there's no wood. It's funny. The only other thing is that I like the potion scene in the book where she figures out the potions. I think it would look cool. I get kind of why you would cut it, because somebody solving a logic puzzle isn't necessarily the most compelling thing in the world. And just for time, I get it. But it also makes sense. I think it's a little strange that they cut those out, because the whole point is that all of the teachers, and I guess maybe they don't mention this in the movie, but that all of the teachers have contributed something to protect it.
A lot lot of the teachers, I guess.
Yeah, not all. Like Professor Binns. Oh, we'll talk about. He didn't contribute anything. But I think it was. I get why they cut it. But it's like, well, now only like 3 teachers protected it. It's a little strange.
Whatever.
All right, let's talk about Voldemort.
Voldemort. A lot of people like to laugh at the fact that Voldemort in later movies doesn't have a nose. He does have a nose in this one.
Yeah.
They go ahead and give him a nose.
Yeah, when he shows up on the back of Quirrell's head.
But I would like to point out that it is actually canon that Voldemort does not have a nose.
At least in the form where he's the back of somebody's head.
Harry would have screamed, but he couldn't make a sound. Where there should have been a back to Quirrell's head, there was a face, the most terrible face Harry had ever seen. It was chalk white, with glaring red eyes and slits for nostrils, like a snake.
Yep.
So, canonically, no nose.
Yeah, they weren't messing around with him. They knew what they were doing.
But the movie gives him a nose.
Yeah.
In this first one. He's got a nose. And I don't... Why the smoke ghost thing?
So they make a few changes. One that I'm not a big fan of. One in the movie, it's only when Harry touches Quirrell that Quirrell is burned. Whereas in the book, as soon as Quirrell touches him, he starts being burned. Yes. Which I thought was a weird change, because it's the magic in Harry. It's not specifically Harry's palms that are that are the problem. It's just the fact that the protection Harry has. Period. Which so that was a weird change. And then in the movie they also make him like Quirrell like dissolve and break into pieces.
He like crumbles to dust.
Yeah, that's not what happens in the movie. In the movie or in the book, that's not what happens in the book. In the book, Dumbledore shows up.
Yeah.
Or he tells him later that Dumbledore shows up and pulls Quirrell off of him, and then I assume Dumbledore says that Voldemort leaves them and Quirrell dies.
He says that Voldemort got away.
Yeah, and Quirrell ends up dying.
Yeah.
So it's similar, it's just slightly different. And so in the movie he becomes like a smoke monster and flies through Harry's chest, and then Harry passes out. The reason they did that change is so that there's a moment of triumph for Harry that we see. Harry won. He comes at Quirrell, he burns him, and he destroys him, and we think he's won. So 1, that gives us a yay, Harry won. And then 2, it also is like a whoa twist. Just when you thought it was safe to get back in the water, Voldemort's spirit comes out and rushes through Harry, and it's like a big surprise. Yeah. That's why they did it that way, as opposed to Harry just sort of slowly blacking out.
Right.
And then waking up in the hospital, which is what happens in the book.
I mean, yeah, I get that. I have a couple issues with that. The first one being that they specifically showed him going through Harry's chest, because I feel like that implies that he's going into him.
Yes. It's a little weird, especially because we know what happens later, and we know Harry's story and the fact that he does have part of Voldemort's soul basically in him. So it is a little confusing. It could be potentially confusing to movie viewers thinking, is that when Voldemort became part of Harry?
Yeah, and it implies that there's going to be something about that later.
That's important later.
That's important later, or even within this movie, maybe. Yeah. But there's not.
There's not. But it's just their way. There's not. All it is ultimately just a way to get Harry to pass out. It's like, Voldemort's final thing.
Yeah. The other thing is that, Voldemort exits from Quirrell's body and becomes a smoke thing, which to me implies that he was a smoke thing before he was inside of Quirrell. Yeah. So I like to think that he was keeping him in a big bottle.
A big jar.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, because it's also never addressed in the book of sort of what form Voldemort was in when Quirrell found him, if he was some sort of vague ghosty spirity type thing. It's just kind of the implication, I assume, that he was is some sort of
the next time that we actually see Voldemort in book 4, he's like a little broken husk of a person.
Yeah, he's like a little baby.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
I don't know.
I don't know.
All right. I think that's all I got for Better in the Book.
Yeah. But Better in the Movie is significantly shorter.
Yeah, it should be a little bit shorter. So let's get on to Better in the Movie.
My life has taught me one lesson, Hugo, and not the one I thought it would. Happy endings only happen in the movies.
Better in the Movie, I think the movie made a good choice with cutting Dudley's friend, Pierce
Polkus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We don't really need him.
He's unnecessary.
And removing him from that equation lets us focus more on the relationship between Harry and the Dursleys, which we do need because they cut out that exposition at the beginning where they establish who the Dursleys are.
Yep. I liked that they make McGonagall's hair gray. Mm-hmm. Or it's kind of reddish grayish, not
brownish,
gray,
reddish.
Brown.
Yeah, it's starting.
It's
to
Maggie
gray.
Smith's hair color. It's whatever her hair color was. In the book, it's black, and I completely forgot that her description when she's first introduced in that first chapter is that she has black hair, and I was like, wow, I don't remember that McGonagall's supposed to have black hair.
There's an implication that she's maybe younger.
Yeah,
in the book,
I think potentially supposed to be
movie.
younger than, but Maggie Smith as McGonagall is so iconic to me that I'm like, yeah, no, that's McGonagall. Like Maggie Smith is Professor McGonagall.
Maggie Smith was already iconic.
No, I know.
Movies. So like, I have to imagine that when J.K. Rowling found out that Maggie Smith,
she's like, her hair can be.
She probably like pooped her pants. Yeah. I would.
Yeah. She's like, sure. Her hair does not. You don't have to dye your hair, Maggie Smith. Just keep your hair the color it is. They amp up the amount of letters coming through the fireplace in a fun way in the movie. Yeah. Where it's like in the book, I think it's described as like 20 to like it's a lot, but it's like maybe 50. Whereas in the movie, it's like
hundreds of letters
and hundreds
flying
and hundreds,
everywhere.
and they're coming through the mail slot. I think I like that how over the top they take that. I just thought it was fun.
I actually have that in the movie. Nailed it.
See, I thought the movie elevated it even more to the point where that made it slightly more better in the movie.
I gotcha.
In the sense that it just turns it up even more from what the book did. You're a wizard, Harry. We talked about it, but the change again. I don't know if this one maybe not necessarily better in the movie, but it has become so iconic that when you read the book and see Harry, you're a wizard, it feels wrong.
I mean, there's like technically speaking, there's really not any difference. Yeah. It's just flip-flops the way that he says it. But you're right, the movie version has become so iconic at this point.
Yeah. It reminds me of, it's like in, with the Luke, I am your father. Yes. That's not the actual line, but that's how everybody says it. It's no, I am your father. But everybody says, Luke, I am your father. It's become so iconic.
I have a couple small things. I like that the chocolate frogs move. Yeah, in the movie.
I had that chocolate frogs jump around. That's neat. Yeah, they're not mentioned. Cool. It could be in the book, but it's not mentioned.
Yeah, it's not mentioned.
I want to talk about the change of the hut scene that I thought was really good when they're on the rock. So in the movie, at one point, and this happens in both, Hagrid curses Dudley and puts a pigtail on him. Mm-hmm. In the book, that happens because Vernon insults. And it's kind of the same in the movie, but in the book, Vernon insults Dumbledore, and Hagrid loses his shit and says, "Don't insult him in front of me," and then curses Dudley. In the movie, they add one slight wrinkle that I think helps a lot and sort of makes it less weird. Dudley is stealing Harry's birthday cake.
Yes,
that's
that
not
is a good
mentioned
change.
in the book. And it's in the book, Dudley's just standing there.
Right.
And I thought it was very strange that Hagrid takes his anger out on the kid. Yeah. It was very weird. But in the movie, there's Dudley stealing Harry's birthday cake. There's at least some karma there of, oh, yeah, well, I'm going to teach you a lesson type thing. Mm-hmm. That's not your, it's a small change, but I think it's a very good, good change.
I agree. Another small change, I don't think this was in the book, when they're doing their flying lessons, and Harry flies off, and Hermione has another iconic Hermione line, "What an idiot."
What an idiot. Yeah, I don't believe that's in the book. I'd have to go back and double check, but I don't remember that being in the book. I love, and this is going back to the Sorting Hat, the movie makes the good decision to drop the Sorting Hat song. In my opinion, Although I will say, I think it would work better in the movie. I'm not a fan of reading songs. It really annoys me in books when I read songs.
You're
it's one of the reasons
Tolkien rolling
I know.
great.
It's one of the reasons I have such a hard time getting through Lord of the Rings. I've never actually finished all of them. I've finished the first two and most of Return of the King, but I've never actually finished it, I don't think. But reading songs to me is so tedious. One, because my head cannot help but sit there and go, what is the tune of this? What is it supposed to sound like?
Yeah, like at least what tempo am I supposed to be reading this
and
at?
so my head constantly, like, I keep going back and redoing it to make like the verses sound right, and like it's so annoying to me to read music. So I hate.
And the movie actually cuts 2 songs from this one. They cut the Sorting Hat song and then the Hogwarts school song.
Yes,
they sing at the end of the feast.
Which that would be fun, because in the book they all sing the Hogwarts song, but they all sing them. Albus specifically says pick your pick your favorite tune and sing the words. So like the Weasleys, they're singing it to like a funeral march or whatever. So they finish way after everybody else, which that's a fun moment. I actually kind of wish that had been in the movie, because I think it's fun. And again, kind of sets up, because Albus or Dumbledore is like very much enjoying the Weasleys.
Yeah.
Like they make a point in the book that he's like applauds and waits for them to finish. But yeah, I don't like reading songs. Now they could have done it in the movie, because I wouldn't have had to read it. I could have just watched the things sing the song. It would have been better, I think. But I'm just glad they cut it. I don't care about the Sorting Hat song. Come at me.
Here's a change that I thought was a good idea. In the Quidditch match, where Quirrell is jinxing Harry's broom.
Yeah.
So in the book, the broom is like a bucking bronco, and then he gets down to he lands on the grass after everything is okay.
Yeah.
And then he coughs up the snitch.
Yeah.
And the implication, I think, is that he just like happened to swallow it.
I agree. I have this note.
But I like that the movie allowed him to get back into the game after that happened, and show that, hey, he actually is really good at this.
Right. Yes. 100%. I didn't remember how the Quidditch, the end, how that match ends in the book. The implication is that he kind of just accidentally catches like somehow the snitch goes into his mouth. Like, it's very strange. Like he's flying, and then the way it's described is like, what? Oh, he has a snitch. It was in his mouth. He like coughs it up or whatever. In the movie, he sees it and is chasing it. And then I like the thing that is interesting about the way the movie does it. He stands up on his broom to try to catch it and walks too far forward. It's a little silly he's standing on his broom, but whatever. Like, it's fine. And he walks too far forward, and his balance comes off, and he falls. And as he's falling, it like his mouth falls, and he swallows
he happens to get the snitch.
But he was in the act of catching it, and I likely would have caught it were it not for his inexperience. Because it showed in the scene, it looks like the reason he fell and tripped and fell off the broom was because he was a little inexperienced and didn't his balance got off. So he's good and he has these natural skills, but he's also inexperienced and doesn't really know exactly what he's doing. So it's kind of a mixture of those things. Where in the book, that doesn't come across as much. I want to go back real quick. They drop History of Magic and Professor Binns completely in the movie. I think that's a smart change. Because literally, when the whole joke of the book is that the professor and the class are so colossally boring, like that's the gag. Probably a good idea to cut that from your movie.
Although I could have done with maybe a nod to Professor Binns, because I like the idea of a ghost teacher. I
do like the explanation too. In the book that he was so boring and he had such a drab job that he one day got up, didn't realize he was dead, and just kept teaching. I like that. It's funny.
And I like that Hogwarts just allows it.
Yeah, they're like, fine. Whatever.
I'll allow it.
Yeah. The Wingardium Leviosa scene, it's not better. The lines are slightly different. I would say it is better. The lines are slightly different, but Emma Watson just nails the Wingardium Leviosa, not Leviosa. Like, that's not exactly how the lines are in the book. She says you're saying it wrong, but she doesn't have that exact dialogue.
Right.
But I think Emma Watson just nails that scene so much that I think the movie it's better. It's more effective in the movie. And it really gets across like how obnoxious she can be. There's a great moment when Ron makes the club float when they're fighting the troll. I just love it because it's a good character moment for Ron, I feel like, and it's not in the book. When they're battling the troll in the girls' bathroom, and Ron Wingardium Leviosa's it, and it floats up, and then a moment in the movie, it cuts to him, and he goes, cool. And then it falls. And I just like that because it's like, he didn't trust himself to actually be able to do that. So when it happens, he like takes a moment and is like, well, like I thought that was a fun Ron moment, and that's not in the book.
The last thing I have on this list is kind of a contentious thing that I've seen people talk about before on the internet. When Dumbledore last minute snatches the house cup from Slytherin at the end.
Yeah, that's a common, meme.
It's a common kind of contentious moment, and I don't disagree with that. I think it is kind of mean. It
is. My biggest problem with it isn't that the last minute points come in and they give it to Gryffindor. My biggest problem is that they put up the Slytherin banners.
Yeah, right.
That's the weird part to me. And then they change them to Gryffindor.
It adds insult to injury. Yeah. Like, they're just rubbing salt in the wound.
Again, it's one thing if you're going to announce it and then put up whoever's banners wins. Yeah. And sure, there could be last minute points, fine. But it's another thing to be like, look, who won? Psych. Like, that's the weird part to me.
But anyway, I was going to say that I felt like the movie maybe attempted to offer more of an explanation for that last minute thing, or attempted to correct it a little bit by showing that Slytherin House cheated to get some of their points.
Yeah.
Because in the Quidditch game, they like openly cheat. And no fouls are called. Yeah. Even though they are in the book, they do call penalties. Yeah. There's a whole thing where she calls a penalty on Flint or whatever, and then there's a big... they don't ever call any penalties in the movie. They just let all that stuff happen. But yeah, they were cheating to get their points. Yeah. And explicitly... But that also happens in the book, because there's a moment where basically it's not even cheating so much as where Snape is just kind of bullshitting, handing out points to Slytherin and taking them away from Gryffindor with no real purpose other than he doesn't like, Harry Potter. Like, it's... not necessarily better, but I like the gladiator-style entrance for the Quidditch match, and I also like... seeing the Quidditch. As fun as it is reading Lee Jordan's commentary on what's happening in the Quidditch match, it's actually much more enjoyable just to watch it. No, I agree.
Think, you know what I mean? Like, it begs for a visual medium, and I think it plays out really well in the movie. They do a pretty good job. CG's not always 100% perfect in this first one because it's 2001, but... they changed... real quick. Hagrid's... I shouldn't have said that. I like that gag. They make that a running gag throughout the movie. He only says it once in the book at the very end. Basically, he goes like, I should not have said that or something. But they make it a running gag throughout the movie, and it's funny.
It comes back a couple times.
Yeah, and he does a good job with it. Oh, I like Ron's line, and this is not in the book, where Hermione does something. I'm trying to remember exactly what. Oh, when she Petrificus Totalises Neville as they're going to the thing, Ron goes, "You're a little scary sometimes. Brilliant." But scary. And I like that line. I think it's a good line for Hermione. Or not a good line about Hermione, and I like that addition, and I thought it was fun. Oh, and this is a little one, but for all the chess players out there, I think this is a really good, smart change, and it really bothered me in the book. So when they're playing chess in the movie, when Ron makes his move that forces the queen to take him, and then Harry can win, in the book, he makes the move, and then just stands there, and then the queen comes and takes him, and takes him out, and then Harry moves in and calls check. In the movie, Ron moves into position and says check, and then the queen takes him, and then Harry moves into his spot and says checkmate, and the game ends. I don't know. Maybe there's some ways that the lingo of chess is different in certain places, or maybe, I don't know. But my understanding is you would have to, or I guess you don't have to say check, but Ron's move is in order for the queen to be forced to take Ron, his move would have had to put the king into check, or else the queen wouldn't have been forced to take him. Thus, meaning Harry's move wouldn't win the game. So I was like, I'm glad they made him say check, because he doesn't say that in the book, and he should, because he's putting the king in check in that move. And then Harry's move is actually mate, not check, because in the book, I'm pretty sure Harry says check when actually it's mate. I could be wrong about all this. Again, I'm not a big chess player, but I know the basic rules of chess, and I thought it always bothered me.
Well, and it's also a good dramatic moment, too, that he moves into place and says check.
All right. Oh, boy. We knew these were going to be long, but let's get on to the book, or the movie Nailed It.
Nailed it.
It's our new segment for the Harry Potter ones, and we might add it to other ones in the future. I think it's a good segment. But for this one, what did the movie nail? This isn't changes. This is this things from the book that the movie knocked out of the park.
Well, I had the flying letters under this one.
Yes,
I also have Hagrid's entrance to the hut on the rock.
Yeah,
kicking down the door. I thought they did a really good job with that.
Yeah, my list was Dumbledore. Everything about Dumbledore. He looks great. Dumbledore 1, that is.
Dumbledore, can I just say how much Dumbledore as a character, not necessarily the two actors that played him, but his commitment to the wizard aesthetic is just because like none of the other wizards do that.
No, the giant hair,
the flowing hair and the wizard
giant
beard
cloaks and
robes and hats and like he really goes for it.
He really does go for it. But no, so my list was like, Dumbledore, casting was perfect. He looks great. And then the Dursleys, spot on in every way. And then Hagrid's spot on, the voice especially. And I got to the point, it's like, it's just the casting. Like they crushed the casting is what that kind of boils down to is like every single person, pretty much this casting is just spot on. And like they're exactly what you imagine when you read them for the most part, pretty much exactly what I imagined when I read the books. Yeah. Slight changes here and there, but
a little thing that I had never noticed before in this movie, when they're walking up to the leaky cauldron, the sign at first looks like it's blank, and as they get closer to it, it like slowly appears. Like the words, the leaky cauldron, slowly appear on it as they walk up. I thought that was cool.
Yeah, that is kind of cool. Diagon Alley, I think. Yes. Just the look and feel of Diagon Alley. I have that in my notes, too, because it's exactly as magical as I pictured it. It is perfectly quirky and cozy and crowded and British is what I have in my notes. I've been to London and Edinburgh, Scotland, and I went to a place, I believe it was, I can't remember, it was in London or York, or I don't remember where it was, but it was a place called the Shambles. And it looked exactly like that. It's the one where the top halves of the buildings hang out over the street. You know, like the second story and third stories, they built out and they hang out over the street and they almost touch, and it's super narrow and it's got little storefronts, and it just captures that feeling pretty much perfectly. Ollivander's creepiness. Yeah, the movie kind of nails that. Played by the late great John Hurt in the movies, but I always enjoyed that he's sort of weird in the books. Like he's weird. He's kind of like that guy that's like, but a lot of good came from Hitler, right? Yeah, it's just like not even so much that a lot of good came from Hitler, but just like he enjoys magic and like the mystery and the power. But it doesn't really like he's not like putting like a moral decision on it. Yeah, like he's not judging. True neutral. Yeah, he's literally like a true neutral. Like, this is bad. What he did was bad, but it was pretty crazy cool. Like, I get it. Like, I'm not saying it wasn't good. I'm just saying like, wow. Like, you know what I mean? Like that's kind of his character, but in like a weird, like eccentric way. And I think the movie kind of nailed. John Hurt kind of nailed that in that scene when Harry's getting his wand. The Hogwarts Express, kind of perfect. And I love that because it would be very easy for them to have just CGI'd a train chugging along and have it look like the Hogwarts Express. But they actually have a train that says, and again, it's not that much work to get a red train and put a Hogwarts Express sign on it. But it really, there's the shots where you see it driving through training through the countryside. Chugging, I believe, is the term. Chugging through the countryside, and it's an actual train. Is nice.
Hermione's introduction on the train as well is spot on.
Yeah, even down to the line, you've got dirt on your nose, just there. Yeah, perfect. The line's like exactly the same, and she crushes it. They wear robes in this one. They wear robes in this movie, which is not necessarily true going forward. The first two they do, but then going forward they kind of stop wearing robes entirely from my memory. Which there's reasons for that, and I don't hate it as much as I used to. It used to really bother me. I get it now more, and I
think we'll talk about that more in upcoming episodes.
Yeah, but I do like that they wore the robes because they're fucking wizards, and they should wear their fucking robes because you're a wizard.
No, but I have some thoughts on that, so we'll get around to that in later movies.
Yeah. Hogwarts. The set design for Hogwarts, the art design of it, the way it looks, the feel, the warmth. It just feels warm and cozy when it's supposed to, and also feels cold and castle-y at other times. I want to go to there. It looks great. Alan Rickman. I was actually sorry, all capitals. Alan fucking Rickman is what I have in my notes. Snape he's perfect.
Yeah.
In the movies, and Alan Rickman just did an incredible job in my opinion. It might even almost be a better in the movie. I think he actually elevates because Snape's really interesting in the books because of what we find out about him,
right?
And his whole role and everything is really interesting. But since you're not hearing him and you're not seeing the performance, he's just Snape the character, but the way Alan Rickman delivers the lines and lives in that character is so he brings an extra level to it that feels very cool. It's just whoa, that's something.
And I believe he knew the whole backstory.
Yes, apparently that's the thing everybody always says, that she told him when they were going in
so
from
that
the beginning.
He could put that into his characterization, which I think really helps.
Yeah. Oh, the troll in the dungeon part.
Yes, I have that in my notes as well.
I love that scene, and it's the exact same line where Quirrell runs into the banquet for our Halloween dinner, and troll in the dungeon. Thought you ought to know. And then it passes out. That's exactly how it is in the book, word for word, and it's very effective and very funny.
I thought the movie nailed the emotions with the Mirror of Erised scenes.
Yes, it did. When Harry sitting there, staring
and
into
he's
the mirror,
literally never seen his parents.
No, no, it does definitely capture that. Because it could definitely be tough to do that in a movie. Because it's all just Harry's emotion, which we get to read in the book and see how he's feeling and why he wants to keep going. But they have to do that in the movie, and kudos to Daniel Radcliffe for that, because he does a good job selling that. Yeah. In that scene, this makes no sense in either the book or the movie, and they kept it. It doesn't make sense to me how fast Hermione gets from the stands on their side to Snape on the opposite side. It's the same in the book and the movie. They're on stands on the far side of the field, and she looks across and sees Snape muttering a curse or a counter curse in the stands. And so she has to run all the way down, and Harry's already almost falling off at this point. All the way down their stands, all the way around the field to the other side, and then all the way up into the other stands. And she does it in 30 seconds. She does it.
She's Hermione. Maybe she already knows how to apparate.
She knows how to apparate already. Could be. But I always thought that was silly. It's how did she get over there so fast?
Maybe there's a tunnel under the field
even
that
still,
we don't know about.
She had to be booking it. Hermione's 100-meter dash time is pretty solid.
That's all I have in my list.
Yeah, that's all I had as well for the movie. Nailed it, which it did. It nailed a lot of things. Yeah. So I think especially this first one, is a pretty faithful adaptation. Yeah. In a lot of ways.
A lot of the original text comes over intact, which is great.
All right, let's do a little bit of loose end, wrapping up general discussion. We've already been going for a long time, but I want to talk about a couple more things, and then we'll hit with our final verdict. So just a little bit of general discussion. We're going to talk about our homework that we assigned about the third person limited. This will be a good place to do it. And I have a few other topics I wanted to bring up. Let's talk about the homework first. Let's talk about the third person limited. Okay, so in the prequel episode, we talked about how the Harry Potter books are in third person limited perspective, which means that it's the he, she voice like a narrator, but we're really only seeing Harry's point of view. There are a couple places where it deviates, but by and large, we're in Harry's perspective. So what that accomplishes is it's a huge part of what makes Snape work as a red herring, as the villain, because Harry is so convinced that it's Snape, that he is the one who is in league with Voldemort and is trying to steal the stone, that we completely miss a lot of really obvious clues that it's Quirrell. Least of which that he's there the day that Gringotts is robbed. He's at the scene of the crime. Yeah, well, he wasn't at the bank, but he was at Diagon Alley,
but we know he was there.
Even though he was in Diagon
there are
Alley.
a lot of things like that that we miss or that we interpret a particular way because what that third-person limited perspective accomplishes is making you think that you have a God perspective when you in fact do not. Yeah. And especially for a reader who is maybe not particularly savvy to tricks like that yet. Right. As kids often aren't, just because they haven't read that much yet.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it is. It definitely works to the advantage of tricking us.
Yeah, and it's kind of a clever little tool. And it's going to come back later. We're going to talk about it later because she turns it on its head.
Interesting.
In a much later book.
The refrigerator kicked on here for a few minutes, so you're going to hear a slight hum in the background. It's only on for a couple minutes, and then it goes away for the end of the episode, so just stick with it for a few minutes.
All right, I have a few other things I want to talk about. One, I think these first two movies came out because they came out so close to when the books came out and when I read the books that they're sort of intrinsically linked in my head. And I think, or inextricably linked in my head. Like, I think it's also probably part of the reason why I enjoy the first two as much as I do, and why I don't have as many problems. They're also closer adaptations than the later ones. The later ones tend to change a lot more. But I think I tie them so closely to the books that they're like one thing. Like I realized that a lot of the ways I pictured characters and how they sounded and stuff like that because I saw the movie so close and then read the book so many times after seeing the movies that it sort of morphed into one thing. Yeah. And I'm not sure I can ever pull apart my perception of what I thought Hagrid looked and sounded like in the book when I first read it versus now when I've seen the movies.
I wish I could remember, man. Harry Potter, and I know people say this all the time, it really is one of those things where I wish I could like erase my memory of it and do it again for the first time.
Yeah, I agree. I feel really weird about labeling non-magic people muggles. And
do you feel like it's a slur?
I feel like it's a slur, and it's real problematic because it's definitely used in a way, like it's used derisively, like muggles. It feels real gross to me, like especially like, you know, like when Hagrid's like what is a giant muggle like you gonna do about it? To Dursley, and like it feels weird to me.
Well, that is something that pays off thematically later in the books. Not the word muggle specifically, but like wizard prejudice towards non-magic people.
Yes, that's fair. And maybe that's on purpose. Because it definitely felt, as I was rereading, I'm like, I don't know how I feel about them like just calling non-magic people muggles and just like fucking muggles. Like it's like, I mean, you could just change that word for another word or a bunch of other words, and this feels like, whoa, we should not be doing that. Like,
I mean, and it's I guess it's definitely one of those things that people argue about whether or not all kinds of slurs are actually slurs.
Right.
But that's definitely something that would probably get a lot of heated debate about whether or not muggle is a slur, because it's not like they said mudblood or, you know, whatever.
Well, but I mean, to me, the intent's what matters. And to me, it's very clear that the intent is to group this whole, all of the non-magic people into a group. And it's even people in the universe that are seen as good and just and you know, like Hagrid. About as good and pure and just of a character, relatively speaking, as there is in the book. And sympathetic as a character as there is in the book. When he calls people muggles, it's not like a friendly description of them. You know what I mean? Like there is a derision in that term, and they definitely feel themselves as better than muggles. Like, I don't know.
But then that's a theme throughout all of the books.
Right. And then that ties into this other thing, morality, the morality of keeping magic from the rest of the world. Discuss.
Oh, God.
That is a whole thing. The fact that, you know, do you have a moral duty if you are a group of people like the wizarding community that has access to this thing, this incredibly powerful, life-altering, life-saving thing. I mean, they can, and we can boil it down to a simple little thing. if you have a technology that allows you to fix somebody's broken arm painlessly in seconds, and you keep that from them, is that there's some sort of moral, there's something to that's a problem. Now there's a whole backstory within the world of Harry Potter and would be the case in the real world of non-magic community not being able to handle the fact that and being and discriminating against wizards and being scared and
the
killing
history
them
of witch burnings and all of that.
Yes, there's all that stuff. So I'm not saying that it's not that there isn't a debate to be had, and that obviously what they're doing is incredibly immoral. Like there's all kinds of historical context and all sorts of things and reasons why they wouldn't necessarily share the magic with the rest of the world, but it is interesting. Like it's probably a moral responsibility if you could figure out a way to do it safely and a way to incorporate it into the world, that you should be sharing this incredible power with the rest of the world.
I'll also say though that specifically within the world of Harry Potter, should they help out non-magic people with the problems that non-magic people are having? Probably, but also like the wizarding world has a lot of shit going on.
Yeah, that's fair. They got their own problems.
Yeah, they really do.
Yeah, that's fair. WTF are prefects?
It's a British school thing.
Like, yeah. That was when I was read them as a kid. That was something. Yeah. I'm like, I love that they changed mum to mom, but left prefect in. Like, I think my 11-year-old brain could have discerned what mum meant, but I don't know what the fuck a prefect is. When Percy's a prefect, I'm like, what does that mean? I mean, context clues, you figure it out. They're like, they're like student, they're like, like RAs basically, kind of type, like a college campus. They're like a student who has more responsibility.
Student leaders.
They look out for the other ones and they report to the heads of house. I get it. Like I figured, but like I've just never heard of a prefect because I'm American. So,
well, how dare you?
Again, we talked about all the setups, but the headless hunt is mentioned in this one, which becomes a thing in the which I don't think is in the movies later, but it's in the books. It's a kind of an important thing. This throwaway line that we didn't mention earlier that we talked about that's really great. Harry says he's. Something's going on. There's some interaction between him and Snape. And Harry has a throwaway thought. He goes, sometimes it feels like Snape can read minds. He can. It's a whole thing that becomes super important later on. It's, again, just little things like that.
Book 6 is when that becomes important?
Yeah, I think it's 6 when he goes and learns Occlumens and Legilimens and whatnot from Legilimancy. I don't know, whatever it's called. From Snape, yeah. You can read minds. Wizards need magic Google. All this looking up shit in books is...
Okay. Here's my thing, though. This is set in the 90s.
Yeah.
So they wouldn't have had Google even if wizards were going to have Google, which
they don't. They don't use any technology, which is the thing they need to get over. That's another thing. Yeah. It's like technology's pretty great. You guys need to figure out how to incorporate that into
at least let your students use ballpoint pens. Come on now.
Well, you need to incorporate technology in there. And I know that like a lot of like none of it works at Hogwarts. I think is mentioned. Like you can't use technology.
But also
at
like a pen would work.
Yeah, but a ballpoint pen would work.
But even still, even with this being set in a more or less pre-Google / internet time period, why doesn't the Hogwarts Library have a card catalog?
But for real, though. Dewey Decimal has been around.
They should have been able to just go to the card catalog at Flamel, Nicholas. Oh, he's in all these different books. Yeah. Okay, let's go.
Yeah. Card catalogs definitely existed. Apparently, wizards, they aren't about that. You just pull books off the shelf and hope you find what you're looking for.
Oh my God. You know what? I've been through a lot of higher education. That's the most stressful thing I think I've ever heard of. Just pulling books off the shelf at random and hoping that what you need is in them.
Oh God, nightmare.
Oh my God.
Yeah, and now they do say that normally they would ask the
librarian.
Which I can't remember her name now.
Madam Pince, I think it is.
No, she's the nurse, isn't she?
No, that's Madame Pomfrey.
They're all so similar. Madame Pince, Madame Pomfrey, and Madame Hooch. I was like, their names are too similar.
Speaking of Madame Hooch, are we done with the library thing? Because I need to go off for a second. Did you have more to say about it? Okay. So Madam Hooch is teaching all of these 11-year-olds to fly. Why doesn't she have a broom with her?
Yeah, that's dumb. Or why does she grab somebody's broom right next to her and go save Neville? Like, he flies away and she's like...
Like, here's my thing. Like, I was trying to come up with a good, like, Muggle analog here. If you were, let's say, an ice skating teacher teaching a group of kids to skate, you would also be on skates.
Yeah. Yeah, so if you could go chase them down if you needed to. Or if you were teaching skiing, you would be on skis. So
why doesn't she have a broom?
It's dumb. It's real
She's
dumb.
teaching them to fly.
Yeah. This is one line I thought was funny, and I know it's just because he's naive and doesn't know any better, but even still, I thought it was funny. In the book and the movie, Harry says at the end when he's going into the last chamber where he assumes Snape is, he goes, Hermione, go back, take Ron, go back, send an owl to Dumbledore. I can hold off Snape for a while, but I'm no match for him, really. And I'm like,
False. You could not.
You could not hold him off for even a second. I mean, in the sixth book, yeah, they duel at the end of the sixth book. Harry gets destroyed. Even then, after he has a lot of training and has gone to battle with a lot of people, he gets completely destroyed by Snape. And then in that instance, it's because he doesn't know how to cast spells without saying the words, which that becomes a whole big thing, which I don't think is a thing in the movies, but I'll have to remember. But that was a whole big plot point in the books, is that you have to learn how to cast spells without saying things. But then also, too,
spoilers, Snape's not actually trying to kill him.
Right.
Even then. Could you imagine if he actually wanted to kill him? Yeah. Harry would just be dust.
To be dead, yeah. Harry knows literally zero magic, almost. Effectively zero useful magic for fighting another person at this point. I just love it. I get that he's naive, but I feel like I would know, okay, big evil scary wizard adult in there. I am 11. I can make a feather float. What am I going to float a feather at him?
Maybe he was just going to toss his wand aside and put up his dukes and say
fist fight him. I was it's such a stupid. Yeah, I know you.
I don't know what he thought his plan was.
What do you think you're going to do in here? You know nothing. He learns how to disarm people in the next book. It's not till next year where you can even know how to disarm somebody. And then my final general note was his books and movies are just a giant warm hug. I love them and they make me happy. The books specifically more so, but even the movies.
Yeah. It's been a lot of fun revisiting this because it's been too long for me.
It had been it's been probably close to 10 years since I've reread them.
Yeah. I have one last really quick thing. And if any of our listeners can answer this for me, because I need to know. There's a scene where McGonagall briefly interrupts one of Quirrell's classes, and he's holding an iguana. And I need to know, why has he got an iguana? Is there a reason for that, or is it just because it's funny?
It's just a thing for him to be holding. It's defense against the dark arts. It doesn't make any sense.
But if anybody knows, I don't know, maybe there's a thing with iguanas. Maybe they're maybe they're evil. I don't know.
Maybe.
If you know, I want to hear about it.
All right. See, I doubt we'll get much input on that, but we'll see. Let's do it. It's time for the final verdict for Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone.
Now, are you ready for your sentence?
Sentence? But there must be a verdict first.
Sentence first. Verdict afterwards.
Katie.
Are we even going to keep a pretense here?
I don't know. That's the thing. We can do the final verdict for all these, but I can pretty much tell you now the answer is going to be the book on every single one. The book's Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, the book is better than the movie. And this is one of my favorite of the movies in terms of, I don't necessarily think it's the best movie of the movies, but it's one of my favorite in terms of as an adaptation. It's one of the closest. This and two, both of Christopher Columbus's or Chris Columbus's.
They're very close.
Yeah,
it's a very close adaptation. But like I said in the Lion, Witch, and the Wardrobe episode, when it's that close, it's the book.
Yeah, it's the book.
It's the source material. Yeah. Sorry, not sorry.
Yeah. I could. Yeah. It's the book's better. All right, that was it. That was an epic 2-hour discussion of Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. This is the shortest one. We can't talk 4 hours about
we'll figure it out.
About the Goblet of Fire.
We'll figure out a system.
We'll have to come up with a way to shorten these up a little bit. I'm sure most people, I actually don't mind these being longer than our normal episodes because I think these are books that people are going to be, they're going to be fine with a little bit longer discussion about such a beloved property.
Yeah.
So I'm not super worried about a 2-hour episode, but yeah, I don't think we can have 4-hour episodes. We're not Dan Carlin doing hardcore history here with his 6-hour episodes or whatever. So
we'll figure it out.
We'll figure it out. So next week, it's a prequel to Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets, the second book. Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets. It's Chris Columbus's second and final Harry Potter film. Richard Harris's second and final Harry Potter film, unfortunately, which we'll have to talk to when we get to the third movie. And the recasting of Dumbledore. Oh boy, that's a whole discussion in itself. All right, well, until next time, keep reading books, keep watching movies, especially Harry Potter, because it's awesome. Keep being awesome.